Mr. Speaker, you led really the second phase of the Reagan Revolution when you led the Republican Party back out of the wilderness and took over the House of Representatives, and you were a speaker of, people say, if you look back on it, really a historic time and a historic speaker. You heard the other day Paul Ryan, after Trump, obviously became the presumptive nominee here, saying he wasn't on board yet to sign up. But just given the institutional, what you owe the institutional, did you think that was correct, and what do you think actually he should have done?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it was a mistake just because as the head of the Republican Party in the House, he really speaks for 247 members, and I think that you need to be a unifying figure at that point, not a divisive figure. But in addition, as Speaker of the House, he has enormous potential power. He doesn't have to schedule anything. And so if he wants to negotiate with Trump, all he's got to say is, look, if we don't reach an agreement, your legislative program is not going to get scheduled. He can do that very quietly in private meetings. And it's an objective fact of how the system works. I hope that their meeting this week is going to be positive. I hope that they are going to find a way to be unified. I think it's good for the country. I think it's good for the Republican Party. There's a pretty fair chance that Donald Trump's going to be the next president. And so you wouldn't want to have a Republican speaker and a Republican president start their working together process with a lot of bad blood. So I'm hoping that this week it'll get sorted out. I know that Paul Ryan is a very principled, very serious guy who has spent an immense amount of time studying issues, feels deeply about them, and I think he was trying to, send a signal that there are really serious policy discussions they need to have. I think he could have done it better, more effectively. But nonetheless, hopefully the meeting this week will get that all worked out.
Look, you're a historian, not just by profession, besides politician, also as a writer of just so many great books on history and also novels about history. You know American history very well. And this populist nationalist kind of movement that looks like Trump is somehow, being the voice of, a little bit of that started in, maybe even more than a little bit, in your campaign for the presidency in 2012 against Mitt Romney. Do you think that there's just too big a gap between the populist nationalist aspects, and particularly policy, bringing back jobs from China, telling Carrier you're not going to ship jobs off, telling Mexico we're going to build a wall and charge him for it, the refugee settlement program, which Paul Ryan's, is it just too big a gap from what Paul Ryan, he keeps saying conservative values, his conservative principles, and what this populist nationalist movement that kind of Trump embodies represents?
Well, there's clearly a gap. I'm not sure it's a gap between conservatism and populism. I think some of it's a gap between a set of values that were shaped in a different world and some objective realities. For example, I strongly supported Donald Trump's speech on foreign policy, questioning the current establishment and the current system, because we are in the 14th year since 9/11. That would be the equivalent of 1955 after Pearl Harbor. And if we were still fighting Imperial Japan in 1955, there would have been some very serious national debates, because it took us about 4 years to win that war. The idea that we've lost over 4,000 young Americans died, over 50,000 seriously wounded, several $1 trillion spent, and we clearly haven't won. It seems to me that's a legitimate place to have a serious national debate and not just chant ideology, but actually look at reality. Replacing Gaddafi turned out to be a disaster. Libya is now just a total mess. Replacing Mubarak almost turned out to be a disaster. And if al-Sisi had not come into power, Egypt today would be as bad as Libya. And you just go around the region and you realize our foreign policy establishment, the State Department under both Bush and Obama, has to be totally, thoroughly overhauled. Well, that's going to cause lots of ripples in Washington, D.C. That really goes against the go-along, get-along mentality of Washington.
Do you think some of the Never Trump guys, and by the way, these people have very deep principles, and a lot of them are still, feeling the results of this, this very vitriolic primary, but did they lose the plot about what Hillary Clinton would be like as commander-in-chief? Could you you're a military, historian, would you walk us through what you think she would do as commander-in-chief of our armed forces, given we're at war with radical Islam throughout the world?
Well, it's hard to know what she would do except by her advisors, and her advisors are all hard left. They're the kind of people who don't want to admit that a large part of what motivates Islamic supremacists is religion. They don't want to admit that this is a worldwide phenomenon. You have to fight everywhere. But it's deep in that. She tends to surround herself in foreign policy with nice theoretical people who do really well at getting a faculty tenure job in a university, but that doesn't mean they have any idea about reality. If you look at her reset with Russia, it's a disaster. Seizing Crimea, seizing the eastern third of Ukraine, putting troops into Syria, all this occurred after her so-called reset. Now, I mean, if that was successful, what would failure have looked like? Her policy, as I said a minute ago, in Libya was a disaster, and of course ultimately cost us the life of an American ambassador and several special forces. Her policies overall have not worked. Her policy in Syria is a shambles. So I'd start and say, explain to me, go to Haiti and look at the failure of the Clinton Foundation after spending a lot of money in Haiti and tell me, why should we believe that in the real world doing real things that Hillary Clinton has a clue how to be effective?
Mr. Speaker, in knowing you for the past couple of years, you've been a great mentor in saying, hey, symbolism in politics is quite important. Is one of the stagecraft and symbolism in President Reagan's was because ideas have consequences. Talking about Hillary Clinton and what the left stands for, and you talked about the war in World War II might have gone to 1955 along the same timelines we've been fighting this war after 9/11. What do you say about President Obama now announcing he's going to go to Hiroshima? How do you think that's going to set, and what do you think he's going to do there symbolically about our country?
Well, I think he's going to tell us we should all be against nuclear weapons, which I think we certainly should be against the use of nuclear weapons. But I don't know that the world becomes safer. We've had a period here where we and the Soviet Union, and to a much lesser extent the British and the French and the Chinese, have had a balance of terror that actually has prevented a war for a very long time. If you look at most of human history, to go for literally 70 years without a major war is remarkable. And there's a chance we'll go further.
And you're saying Pax Americana has really been built upon that the understanding of the use of nuclear weapons.
Hello?
Mr. Speaker, do we still have you?
Yeah, you got me. So some weird moment there.
Yeah, no, I think we went out. But so you're saying Pax Americana was built upon the understanding of that? Absolutely.
And it was built on this notion that in the end, great powers could not afford to stumble into a war with each other because it was too dangerous. It was Lincoln was once challenged to a duel and said, "Fine, since you're the challenger, it'll be shotguns at 3 paces." And the guy said, "That's not a duel, that's murder." And Lincoln said, "That's right. Now, do you want to have the duel or not?" And the guy said, "Well, now that I'm thinking about it, I guess I don't." And in a sense, we had built a system. But Obama will have some kind of mindless anti-American apology of some kind. Everybody has to remember Hiroshima and Nagasaki occurred because Harry Truman believed we would lose up to 1 million Americans trying to conquer Japan by conventional means. We'd had a terrible experience at Iwo Jima. We'd had a terrible experience in Okinawa. We knew the Japanese were preparing for suicidal defensive methods. And it was going to be a very, very long, painful fight. I once had the privilege of having dinner with a famous movie star who said that he was an 18-year-old paratrooper, and he was going to be in the first wave landing in Japan. And he never for a second regretted Truman's decision because he thought the odds against his survival were pretty high. So you start down that road and you think about it, and you have to realize that those weapons were used in a context that was designed to save American lives, which goes to the heart of what Trump has done so brilliantly. Trump has put back at the center of American national security and American foreign policy and American trade policy a very simple question. Is it good for America? And if it's not good for America, he doesn't want to do it. Well, the Obamas and the Clintons are surrounded by people, and to some extent, frankly, the Republican establishment are surrounded by people who always explain to us why we have to give up our advantages in order to placate somebody or please somebody or hold together the UN or meet some agreement in Paris all of it to our disadvantage. And I think what Trump is saying is, wait a second, those policies may have once made sense when we were 50% of the world's economy. They were recovering from World War II, and we had enormous surplus of power and resources. They don't make any sense now. And I think that's exactly right.
Mr. Speaker, before we let you go, last question. As you sit here today with your expertise and understanding of American history, how do you think this thing plays out? I mean, you know the Clintons better than anybody. How do you think they match up against Trump in a general election?
I'll tell you the number one thing, and you and I emailed about this the other day, and this is my current total focus, is the number 38. 38 is the percent that the Clinton Foundation pays men more than women. And I'm trying to get somebody to ask Hillary. This is a number that was developed by the Daily Caller by looking at their tax reports. Nobody's defended it. Nobody's explained it. We can get across to every woman in America that here's somebody who says all these strong words, but by the way, her foundation that she and her husband control pays men 38% more. So every time you hear her talk about her concern for women, just remember, they pay men 38% more at the Clinton Foundation. If you could drive that one fact into the national consciousness, I think her candidacy would collapse.
Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Mr. Gingrich, how can people get more access to your writings?
Well, we do 2 newsletters a week for free at gingrichproductions.com. So if you go to gingrichproductions.com, you can sign up and get our newsletters for free. We also have a new movie coming out. We're going to have a premiere at Mount Vernon on May 20th of a movie called The First American, which puts George Washington in context as the founder of this country, the father who the country leaned on to learn how to be American. And we're very, very proud of that. And, of course, Calista Still is doing Ellis the Elephant, a series of books for 4 to 8-year-olds teaching them American history. Her next book will be Hail to the Chief, Ellis the Elephant teaches young people about American presidents. So we're staying busy at Gingrich Productions. Please hope everyone who's listening will feel free to go there and sign up for the newsletters. I do 2 every week, trying to catch up with this crazy year that we're living through.
Former Speaker Newt Gingrich. Mr. Gingrich, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Former Speaker of the House, a real stalwart in American politics, political thinking, and history.